Okay, good evening, everybody, and Happy New Year to you all. The first item on the agenda tonight is apologies for absence. Mr Evans, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I have apologies from Councillors Fiona Gordon, Matthew Jones, Richard Lewis and Matthew Bailey. Sorry.
Thank you. The next item is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests, and if I can hand you over to Deb, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Got rather a long list of potential items, so please bear with me. I have written to you all to alert you to some of the agenda items that could produce interest. So agenda item number 8, which is the Swansea Local Development Plan. If you or a person with whom you live or a close personal associate has an interest in a potential candidate site, then you should declare a personal and prejudicial interest and withdraw from the meeting on the discussion of this item. Agenda item number 9, adoption of the council tax reduction scheme. If you or a person with whom you live or a close personal associate benefits from the discretionary element of the scheme, and that's the discretionary element only, then personal and prejudicial interest. If you declare personal and prejudicial, when that item, yes, comes to be discussed, you need to leave. When that's sorry, do you want to? Councillor White.
Sorry, Councillor White.
Of the mono, this means single occupier.
Sorry, Councillor, I didn't hear what you said.
Does this also include for single occupier council tax reduction?
No, it's the discretion.
Okay.
If you put your mic up, yes, thank you. It's the discretionary element of the scheme only. It's not the main scheme, so that's fine. That wouldn't produce an interest. Yes, yes, it doesn't trigger an interest. No, it's a discretionary element. Agenda item 10, the coordinated school admission arrangement scheme. If you or a person with whom you live or a close personal associate is directly affected by the scheme, and that is a child entering reception or year 7 from September 2027 onwards, then you'll have a personal interest only in this agenda item. Agenda item 11, the pay policy statement. This is a statutory report which contains information relating to officers' pay. So councillors who have a family member or close personal associate who works for the council should declare a personal interest. As there may be a number of you who are caught by this interest, I'm going to take a block declaration under paragraph 10(2)(c) of the code. So I'll take that now. So if you can all raise your hands, block declaration for those who have a family member or close personal associate who's a council employee, personal interest only. Thank you. Agenda item 13, nomination of Deputy Lord Mayor, Lord Mayor-elect and Deputy Lord Mayor-elect. You will not have an interest simply because you work alongside the nominees, but if you are a nominee or if you're a close personal associate of the nominee, then you have a personal and prejudicial interest and you need to leave for this agenda item. And then we come to the notices of motion. Agenda item 17. This is the pension notice of motion. If you or a person with whom you live or a close personal associate benefits from the action sought in this notice of motion, you're likely to have a personal interest only. Again, I'll take a block declaration for this one because there may be a number of you who are either personally affected or have family members who may be affected. So block declaration, if you can raise your hands, personal interest only. Thank you. And then last one, agenda item 18, notice of motion again. This is the financial hardship one. This is a widely worded notice of motion, covers a number of points: winter fuel cut, farm-in tax and NI increase for businesses. The winter fuel cut and NI increase element of this notice of motion I don't think does trigger a personal interest, but the farm-in tax, I've identified that as a potential interest. So if you or somebody with whom you live or a close personal associate is affected by the farm-in tax part of this notice of motion, then I think you'll have a personal and prejudicial interest and you should leave the meeting for that discussion of that agenda item. So thank you. Those are the potential notices. Can you now declare any that we haven't covered by the block declarations, please.
Councillor Matthews. Put your mic on.
Personal in item 10 also, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Philpott.
Personal and prejudicial for item 13. Personal for item 17. I think that was a block declaration. Personal for item 10, granddaughter going to year 7. And item 11, close personal associate works for the council. Sorry, I think
Councillor
that's
Linda
it.
James.
Item 10, a personal interest. I've got a grandchild starting school September, and the other one was item 17, affected by pension changes.
Okay, Councillor
Item 10, I have a grandson who's about to enter comprehensive.
Councillor Beverly Hopkins.
Item 10, I've got a granddaughter will be entering into nursery.
Thank you. Councillor Rice.
Thank you. Item 10, personal interest is a son about to go into year 7 this year.
Okay. Okay. Councillor David Hopkins.
Item 10, got a granddaughter into nursery.
Thank you. Councillor Fogarty, sorry.
Thanks. Sorry, I've just got on a little bit late, so I think I missed the block declaration on item 17, personal interest only.
And Councillor Bridget Rowlands.
Personal and prejudicial interest in item agenda 18, please.
Thank you. Andrew Stevens.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I have a personal and prejudicial interest in item 8, the Swansea LDP, and I have a personal and prejudicial interest in item 18. In fact, I'm a third generation small family farm that's stands to be directly financially affected by the changes to agriculture inheritance tax.
Anybody else?
Yeah, item 10,
Oh.
personal grandson starting.
Martin.
Personal and prejudicial in item 8 and also personal and prejudicial in item 18. And just for the record, whilst I've got a personal interest in item 11, pay policy, I've been given permission to say to deal with technical queries. Thank you.
Thank you. Personal and prejudicial in the pay policy, but I will be remaining to minute it. That's the item 11. And personal and prejudicial, and I will be withdrawing in item 8. Thanks.
And
Okay.
I've got a personal and prejudicial interest in agenda item 11 as well, the pay policy.
Councillor Penny Matthews. Councillor Di Jenkins.
Item 11, pay policy, personal interest. My wife works for a school.
I've got 2 officers online. Mr. Ben Smith.
Personal and prejudicial interest in item 11, and I will be withdrawing from the meeting, and I'm sure my fellow directors will be saying the same in a moment when you call them in, Chair. Presiding member.
Amy Hawkins.
Yeah, thank you. I'm the Interim Director of Social Services, and I'll be doing the same as Ben just said for item number 11, personal and prejudicial interest. Thank you.
Helen Morgan-Rees.
Thank you, Director of Education. Same for item 11, personal interest. We'll leave the meeting.
Thank you all. Have I missed anybody? No? Yes, online. Okay. Okay, we move on to the next item then, and that's the minutes. It's to approve and sign the minutes of the previous meeting as the correct records. And they're on pages 1 through to 9. I'll go through them one by one. So it's page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. All in agreement? Okay, thank you. The next item is the written responses to council asked at the last ordinary meeting of council, and that's on pages 10 through to 13. And then I have the announcements, my announcements.
Chair, on a point of order, one of the question 2 in that thing is it has said that it's going to take longer than expected to compile, and there's a number of questions in the main question agenda which also have been deferred because it's taking time to compile. Now, it does seem to me that if we're going to have effective scrutiny in this council, we do need to have a prompt reply to questions, particularly questions like this, which frankly, how much is the anti-governance building cost should be available by looking at the various spreadsheets. So I'm just wondering why it is that we're being these questions being put off from being answered when really we should be getting answers within the time scale which we've been asked to table them for. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Stewart.
Chair, I fully appreciate where Councillor Black is coming from in terms of requiring the answer to the questions. That is absolutely the aim of the new policy, which we've all agreed. And usually those answers will be given. I think on the specific questions around Debenhams, that is a multi-year question, and I know officers are very keen that they do not omit any part of the costs and therefore could give an inaccurate or incomplete response to members. So therefore a double check is being done to make sure that is the case, and the members will be provided with the response to that question as soon as possible. I think the aim would be for that question to be provided in the next few days and certainly then published in the next agenda, which is what the policy says.
Also, Chair, that there's at least one Part A question where that is the case, which means we have to defer to the following meeting, which means we have one less Part A question at that meeting. So it does seem to me that we do need to actually get our act together and get these questions answered within a reasonable timescale.
Okay.
Chair, I'm not aware of that implication because I didn't believe that there was a follow-on impact, but certainly happy to pick that up with Councillor Black. But certainly officers are taking every effort or making every effort to ensure that they provide Cabinet members with the information required so that we can provide the answers.
Okay, we move on to the next item then, and it's the announcements of the presiding member. It's starting with sadness, I'm afraid. It's with sadness that I refer to the recent death of Deputy Lord Mayor and Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald. Wendy served as a Deputy Lord Mayor for 24-25 and was councillor for nearly 21 years, representing the Pentlegare ward. Wendy was also a former cabinet member. Wendy served the City and County of Swansea from June 2004 to January 25. And can I call upon the political group leaders to pay tribute to the councillor Wendy Fitzgerald, please?
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Member. It is very difficult to actually, it's very difficult to talk about Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald without realising just what Wendy brought to this council and what she brought to Pentlegare. She was born in North Cornwall, and being a Celt, she must have felt really at home in Swansea because she lived here for over 50 years. She was a community councillor. She kept the roads clean. She did the fields. She did the knitting club, and she was also involved in open garden events to raise money for the Forget-Me-Nots charity. I find it very difficult to actually talk at any length and tell you how much I miss Wendy and her sarcasm, her wit, and I will for a long time remember those immortal words, "in my ward." And as I say, a lady that will be hugely missed, not just in this chamber, not by her friends, but by the people of Pentlegare. And I'm just very sad that it happened and she wasn't able to complete her time as Deputy Lord Mayor and Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. And on behalf of the Labour Group, offer our condolences to Wendy's family and friends and everyone who knew her. Wendy was a force of nature. I think that's for sure. She was a character. in the council, a real champion for a community. And whilst we didn't agree on many things, we often had a bit of fun about it. And you know, I'm sure this place won't be the same without Wendy. I think it would be appropriate to recall a few funny incidents with Wendy at this time. Those members will remember the infamous debate on dog walkers, which turned into a debate on dogging, inadvertently in the chamber. But that was typical Wendy. And, you know, I'm sure that the process of the LDP will be will emanate a lot smoother. But Wendy will Wendy will be watching us from above and watching the process very very closely, I'm sure. But no, she was a real character and somebody who brought such a lot to Swansea, did a huge amount for a ward, and will be sorely missed.
Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Can't hear him.
Yeah, great. I was saying it was with great sadness that I learned of, you know, of Wendy's death, and she is a great champion for Pentlegare. Rob mentioned the LDP, and I think the cycle track would equally be a similar sort of thing. And when I look across and see the empty seat there, it is sad. But when you speak to people in Pentlegare, and I know people up in that area and how sad they are, what a great loss she is, because you'd see her picking up litter as you drove through and so on. She was always doing something and was really well thought of and will be a great loss. It's also a great sadness that she couldn't continue obviously as Deputy Lord Mayor, and she now will not be Lord Mayor, and that is a great sadness, and my thoughts and the group go to her family.
Councillor May.
Wendy, have a very long friendship with Wendy, you know, spanning more than the 20 years that we're in council. I shall miss her dearly. She was a lovely human being. If we take out the away from the council chamber, I remember visiting her once to drop some leaflets off for her. I took my eldest daughter with me. And she ran down the drive and wouldn't let the car leave. And she brought out the little China tea set, doll's house tea set for her to bring as well. So there was always a thought of kindness wherever Wendy goes. I mean, this place here is all theatre, and we have a laugh and a joke. But if you dig down at the end of the day, outside this chamber, we're all human beings, and Wendy was a lovely human being.
Okay, thank you all.
Wendy Fitzgerald, as has been said, was a force of nature. We clashed many times, as I said, as the leader said, we didn't agree on many things politically. When she understood that politics wasn't personal in this chamber, I think she settled in rather well. And from my point of view, personally, she was very kind and supportive when Sybil got sick. And what I shall miss is basically, I always thought of her as the sole opposition to the Labour Party, because she's the only person, perhaps my colleagues will tell you, other than me, who read the whole agenda, prepared her questions, did the research, did the follow-up, and asked the questions. So the one thing we will miss from Wendy's death is that we're going to have a much easier time of it.
Okay, thank you. Again, it's with sadness that I refer to the recent death of Gerard Holly, brother of Councillor Holly. And can I ask you all to stand for a minute's silence, please? Okay, thank you. Okay, on a lighter note, we've got the New Year's Honours. It's the citizens of Swansea who received awards in the New Year's Honours. The first one is the Commander of the Order of the British Empire, CBE, Janice Victoria Williams, OBE, Chair of the Swansea Bay University Health Board for Public Service, the Swansea and West Glamorgan. The next is the Member of the Order of the British Empire, the MBE. It's Wendy Ansell, Specialist Midwife, Cardiff and Vale University Health Board, for services to survivors of harmful practices and to women seeking sanctuary, Swansea and West Glamorgan. The next is the Medalist of the Order of the British Empire, the BEM. It's Karen Pitt, Senior Telecoms Engineer, Driver and Vehicle Licensing Agency for services to science, technology, engineering, mathematics skills, Swansea and West Glamorgan. The next is the King's Police Medal. It's the KPM, and it's Jeremy Mark Vaughan, the Chief Constable of South Wales Police, South Wales. The next item is the Safer Communities Award ceremony for 2024. I'm delighted to outline Swansea Council's success at the Safer Communities Award ceremony 2024. The Council achieved 27 awards across 13 categories, and the awards include the winner, the Best Crime Prevention Project, Swansea Council City Chill Events, the winner of the Best Early Intervention Project, the Collaboration Station, highly commended Equality, Inclusion and Cohesion, Place and Cadler Primary Schools, the winner for Equality, Inclusion and Cohesion for Afternoon Teens, and the overall Community Safety Award Wales winner for Swansea Council's City Chill Events. Members of the Council's Partnership and Involvement Team, Youth Service, Community Safety Team, partners and people involved in these initiatives are, they should have been present in the chamber, but I don't think they are. And on behalf of the Council, I'd like to thank and congratulate them all on their dedication and their achievements. Okay. The next is St Mary's Church in Swansea. The city centre will soon become the first Minster church in Wales as part of a multi-million pound transformation. St Mary's will receive a £2.8 million investment over the next 5 years, helping to create jobs and safeguard the future of the Swansea landmark. Minster is the title given to a large or important church, especially a collegiate of cathedral church, and reflects the importance of St Mary's to the city. The investment will enable the employment of new members of staff, both clergy and lay workers, increasing its ability to serve the Swansea city centre community, and be they residents, workers, visitors, refugees or the homeless. The next is Oliver Treviso from Swansea is walking the length of the Andes Mountains alone and carrying everything he needs in his rucksack. He has been walking for more than 1 year after starting the journey in Tierra del Fuego at the very southerly tip of Argentina. He has walked through the 4 counties already and covered over 5,000 miles. Whilst on the journey, he is raising awareness and funds for the mental health charity MND. Oliver believes he may be the first person to do this journey, and he hopes to be back in Swansea in March 2025. So congratulations to Oliver for his incredible achievements and his adventure. Swansea will play host to a charity walking event to raise awareness and funds for vital research into blood cancer, the 5th most common cancer in the UK. Taking place on the evening of the 29th of March 2025 along the picturesque Swansea Bay Promenade. The Walk of Light in Aid of Blood Cancer UK will bring together the community in support of those affected by blood cancer. The Council's Chief Executive, Martin Nichols, who has had blood cancer himself, is organising the event and is keen to raise the profile of the blood cancer and raise some much needed funds for ongoing research. Details of the event can be provided by Martin to anyone who is interested in joining or supporting the event. Okay, and can I call on Hugh?
Thank you, Presiding Member. Since preparing that, some other items have come to my knowledge. Item 14, dispensation report, that's now going to be withdrawn. Item 18, I forwarded 2 amendments earlier today to you all. Amendment 1, that's the one from the Labour group. On the 4th paragraph, on the very final line, the word 2, there's a typo there, it should be TOO, so apologies for that. And again, on item 18, amendment 2, that's the amendment from the Lib Dem and opposition group, that's going to be withdrawn, so that's not proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is the announcement of the Leader of the Council. Can I call on Mr. Stewart? Councillor Stewart, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. My first announcement is just to pay tribute to all of those who participated in Holocaust Memorial Day this week. We gathered in the George Hall to commemorate and remember all of those killed in Nazi atrocities during the Second World War and then in genocides since. I was very struck by the words of Norma Glass, who's a stalwart of the Jewish community, who in her speech drew the comparisons of what happened in 1930s Germany with what we are starting to see in many parts of the world again today. Norma was really clear that we should act on those warning signs. It was really great to see so many of our school pupils there also participating in the ceremony and retelling the stories and retelling the prayers and the commitments and learning from the horrible past that unfortunately so many of our ancestors endured. At the event, I also made the following words, and if I will share them again with Council today. We should remember that the Holocaust was the Nazis' attempt to annihilate the Jewish people across Europe. It also targeted minorities and spanned 22 different countries with the active participation of the citizens of those countries. The Nazi Party was elected in 1933. In the years that followed, it removed civil servants from key positions, removed rights from minorities, banned trade unions, and threatened the imprisonment of political opponents. Following this, it moved to ban opposition parties and arrested or murdered its opponents. We are here today, as we were, to remember the unthinkable atrocities that followed in the following years. By remembering these events, we're able to identify with the warning signs that we see in our world today. We must do all we can to prevent history from repeating itself. We must redouble our actions to create a peaceful world. Together, we can build a future where all people can live free from hatred, prejudice, conflict, or fear, a future where all people are valued and respected. And I finished by quoting the Bishop of Washington, who you may have seen recently making the news, Marian Edgar Bood. She said, "Grant us the strength and courage to honour the dignity of every human being. Speak the truth, even when, and especially when, it costs us. Walk humbly with one another for the good of all people of this world." Okay, so that was my first announcement, Presiding Member. My second one is on a more positive and more lighter note, but really pleased to be able to share with Council tonight that we've reached agreement with the first tenants for 71-72 Kingsway, and we'll be able to announce the name of those tenants in the formal handover ceremony to take place in February. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. The next is public questions. We haven't got any. So we move on to item 8, which is Swansea Local Development Plan for 23 to 2038. And I'm going to like to call on Councillor David Hopkins, please. Wait for members to leave first. Thank you.
Thanks, Presiding Member. It gives me a great pleasure to bring this report to you today. With some 18 months ago, back in July, when we had a report, the Council approved a delivery agreement, setting out how the authority will produce a new replacement plan, known as the LDB2. Since that time, a high-level pre-deposit plan has been prepared and is updated evidence-based. This represents a key stage of the LDB2 process, and the documents are now ready and subject to widespread consultation following initial stakeholder engagement. The covering report highlights the main purpose of the pre-deposit plan to present a preferred strategy of how we will use land to develop and enhance over the next decade and beyond to 2038. To how the council will deliver an ambitious objectives. So at this stage, what I would like to just state, I've got Tom Evans with us today to actually take us through the report or talk us through part of the report. If you have got any questions that are going to be site specific, then I can give some advice of. This will be not at that stage for this meeting, but what I would say, if you can contact his team to discuss any site specific issues, then obviously that will be part of the process going forward, because this is where the process starts to that. So I'm not going to add anything else at this stage, only hand over to Tom to take us through. If there are any sort of technical questions, I'm sure Tom is far better to answer than me.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hopkins. I'll take members through the scope of the report. But just to say, as was mentioned there, I'm here for questions. Anything that requires clarification or any queries, I'm happy to respond to those, particularly on any kind of matters of the process. So, Section 1 of the report just provides a bit of a quick overview, really, of what the LDP is all about, what are the requirements of this council in terms of producing that document, and specifically where this pre-deposit plan sits within the order of the process. We are moving forward through that process towards producing a detailed planning framework that will replace the existing document. We will move towards a public inquiry of that document, and we will have a number of public consultations, periods of stakeholder engagement throughout, as we arrive at the final version, which will be brought before this council for adoption. So I think it's important to say that it is a high-level document. It's not the detailed plan known as the deposit, which, as I say, will be brought before council, but it is an important stage of the process. It sets out the strategic direction of the new LDP. It sets out the overarching principles that will guide the decisions that are going to be made. It makes clear the scale and broad approach to growth that we will follow. And it also contains a set of strategic policies governing the key themes. Section 2 of the report dwells a bit on the core components then of the pre-deposit plan. And just to summarise a few of those, I think it's important to highlight what it is all about. And I would particularly point towards what it highlights in terms of taking forward the placemaking agenda that this council embraced with the first LDP, and which has governed our planning decision making for a number of years. We are building on that foundation. It's an ambitious level of housing and employment growth that is proposed, which reflects Swansea's position at the heart of the growth area in the region. It maximises development opportunities on viable brownfield sites, whilst recognising that there will be a need for some greenfield releases as well to deliver that transformational growth. It promotes strategic scale development, which includes residential-led sites of 400 or more homes alongside complementary uses, including new schools, new areas of open space, new recreational facilities. And this enables the economies of scale to deliver supporting infrastructure and other facilities to benefit communities. These sites are already endorsed by the existing LDP, and they are advanced quite significantly through the planning process. Also, the pre-deposit plan facilitates transformative regeneration schemes within the Swansea Central area and the city waterfront, and at the port and docks and Tower Riverside areas. One of the most important aspects in terms of responding to key societal themes
is how the pre-deposit plan has focused on the green agenda, addressing the climate emergency, addressing the nature emergency, and facilitating proposals for the enhancement of biodiversity across Swansea. It also seeks to maximise the delivery of affordable housing across the urban area and also in sustainable rural and semi-rural locations to address the identified housing needs of those areas and provide for a range and choice of homes. This will include delivering sites where viable for 50% affordable homes. So the rest of the report focuses on some of the supporting documents that underpins the pre-deposit plan. There is a very detailed process known as the sustainability appraisal, the integrated sustainability appraisal and habitats assessments that are statutory instruments required to be carried out to make sure that the impact of the plan is appropriate in terms of its impact on the environment and society more generally, and that will run concurrently with this plan process. There is a candidate site register published, which will be made available alongside the pre-deposit plan. This is a register of all sites that were submitted during that process that was spelt out to members in the previous report. Back in July 2023, the sites submitted are all accounted for in that register, and it identifies those that haven't made the cut in terms of being sifted out at a high level from an initial stage assessment because of fundamental constraints to those sites, but the majority go forward now to a much more detailed assessment process to see whether or not they fit within the strategy that is set out, whether they are appropriate or not for allocation. Finally, then, the report sets out what we have, as a council, been required to do in respect of the delivery agreement, which is in effect our contract with the Welsh Government on how this process is going to be taken forward. Some relatively small adjustments to time scale and some of the processes that will follow, which has reflected experiences elsewhere within authorities and also reflects the amount of public engagement that we've wanted to, that we have done already to get to this stage and that we will do as part of the detailed plan. So finally, the report sets out the steps going forward, and key to those is the consultation that we're going to carry out, and that is wrapped up with the recommendation. There are 5 recommendations, but the critical ones really are the endorsement of the pre-deposit plan and the supporting documents to go forward for that comprehensive public consultation and stakeholder engagement. And that will be starting in earnest within the next few weeks, and will be undertaken for a period of at least 6 weeks to ensure all interested parties have their say in the proposals that we have, which will feed in, as I say, into the production of the more detailed plan that we will come back to council next year to consider.
Good talk. Can I have a proposer, please, and a seconder?
Can I formally move the report, but also and second, sorry, can ask somebody to second. But what I would like to put on record is my thanks to the working group, because they have had several meetings leading up to now, and I would like to put on record my thanks to Tom and his very small team for this process and where we are today. I think he's done extremely well. Very tight, very tight programme, and hopefully we can get a delivery in place. But our existing LDP is time limited, in fairness, so we need this to be done as soon as we can. Formally move.
Formally second, Chair.
Can I ask a question? You know, on 2.14 evidence base, are these going to be publicly available or are they just for the department? And it says then in 2.14, tests of soundness. Can you explain that? Because I think there's part of that during the last LDP discussions we had about employment, and the employment figures that were given out then were nowhere near where the realization of them. So I'm wondering whether what we're doing now with this evidence base will show a more accurate figure to that.
I'll come straight back on that question. Yeah, I think that's an important one. The amount of evidence that underpins the main documents within the LDP is vast. There is already a significant amount produced for the pre-deposit plan. When we get to deposit stage, there will inevitably be an even bigger sort of body of work. But in the appendix of the pre-deposit plan, there is a list of all those supporting documents, as you've identified there, and they will be that whilst they're not statutory consultation documents, unlike what I mentioned in terms of the Canada Site Register and the sustainability appraisal documents, they will be highlighted as being available for people to view and comment on. By their very nature, they become very technical, and that sort of links me into the second aspect of your question, really, on particularly on the work done on employment forecasting, which is done in tandem with the work on forecasting for housing growth and population growth. So we've used the market sort of leaders in this field to undertake that sort of up-to-date analysis, which replaces. So we are not just going with what that sort of evidence base that underpinned the existing plan. We've updated it comprehensively, and there has been an adjustment. There's no doubt about that in terms of examining things like patterns of migration and patterns in population growth and macroeconomic forecasts, local economic projects, and the potential for projects within Swansea to deliver jobs. All of that has been factored in to all the options that have been considered as to where we pitch that levels of growth. We have gone for a higher level of growth in some of the scenarios in terms of job numbers, and I think that is appropriate to reflect on levels of ambition that we have. But it is important that they are grounded in evidence, and we think we've got that, and that's the option that's been put forward and put into the preferred strategy.
Okay, before I take any more questions, can I remind councillors that anything relating to the report should be focused on any clarifications needed regarding the LDP2 process followed and going forward. This includes any questions about how councillors can further engage with the process, and questions should be posed as to whether individual sites should or should not be allocated in the forthcoming deposit plan, since such decisions cannot be made at this stage in the absence of the detailed Stage 2 and Stage 3 assessments being undertaken. There will be an opportunity for members to comment and to raise concerns when the deposit plan is at its consultation stage. Okay, so Councillor Rice, please.
Thank you. My points are a combination of questions for clarification and also about the principles of the core components. So if I just sort of start with those, I have got concerns that the second of the core components is a bit of a green light for building on green fields, especially the second part of it, which says maximising development opportunities on viable brownfield sites, but recognising the need for greenfield release to deliver transformational generation objectives. One thing I think would be useful to know here in a technical sense is the evaluation of the land available, not only from brownfield sites, but I suppose it might be a bit of an Americanism, but greyfield sites, because the council has been quite successful in recent years in developing greyfield sites and has quite a few greyfield sites in its sites for the future. Things like the redevelopment of things like the Civic Centre. And I'd like to hear more about the justifications and a bit of clarification on that one. The second one is on the third point, which is about supporting infrastructure and other facilities to benefit communities. What can be put within the LDP and the consultation process to ensure or suggest the relevant infrastructure is in place? For example, improvements to sewage in maybe northwest Swansea, places like that, and other areas. So I think it's just what part of the process is that involved in? And the final point I wanted to make relates to the fourth point, which is promote a centres first approach. My concern is the principle of the core component there. We have spoken much in the chamber before, and I know the leader has this particular area of interest about rejuvenating the city centre. If we're not careful, this is another open door to more out-of-town development. So just it talks about centres, and I would say that can we clarify the wording of that before it goes out to consultation?
Okay, thank you. I'll take those in turn then. So in terms of that core component, and I'll just read that out. Maximising development opportunities on viable brownfield sites, but recognising the need for greenfield release to deliver transformational regeneration objectives. What that reflects really is the reality of what we have in terms of some exceptional brownfield and greyfield sites, as you say, within the core urban area, at the waterfront, at the port and docks, riverside, and many others. And they will deliver not only commercial mixed-use development, but we will be able to deliver new homes on those sites as well. But the level of need is such, and the need to provide a range and type of homes, and to ensure that we are enhancing communities across Swansea, means that we need to look at every opportunity within neighbourhoods beyond the core urban area, and that involves sites within or on the edge of existing residential neighbourhoods. Now, this gets to the core really of the decisions that we'll make when it comes to housing sites, of where the most appropriate sites are. Those decisions haven't been made yet. What we've highlighted in the pre-deposit plan is that the principle is such that our strategy cannot be entirely focused on the available land within the core central area or within brownfield sites. We simply don't have enough land to be able to provide for that kind of level of growth. And what it also does is illustrate the reality of our strategic sites, residential-led sites that are already form part of our existing plan, which offer great potential to be taken forward into the new plan, which are on greenfield site. And a lot of planning work has been done with those site promoters to build on existing successful neighbourhoods, and also to create new ones. So I think that core component is based on reality in that sense. When it comes to the supporting infrastructure, I think the point that's made in the in that particular component is about what strategic sites offer in terms of that economies of scale to be able to deliver infrastructure through the development process, which if your strategy is based on a very large number of small sites, it becomes increasingly difficult to, because of the planning mechanisms through things like Section 106 agreements and the capped amount of contributions that can be made. So that's what that component is about, really. And in terms of the point about what it needs to be delivered in a timely manner, yes, that can be written into the plan, either very specifically on site-specific policies, but also through the the policy which will deal with the delivery of planning obligations and infrastructure, and it will make clear that those decisions on individual applications need to have that principle of infrastructure being delivered at key moments in the development process written into the plan. And I think that in relation to the third question, you highlighted that the component talks about a centres first approach. What that says is promote a centres first approach to locating significant retail, commercial and leisure development with a continued focus on the regeneration of larger centres to support higher density populations, and doing this alongside enhancement of smaller centres. Really, what that is getting at is ensuring that we do what you've highlighted there in terms of preventing sprawl and out of centre development is doing the exact opposite, making sure that those sort of major developments in respect of commerce and leisure, business development is focused on our city centre, on our main urban area, and some of the larger district centres that we have. Those are the best places for that kind of investment, instead of seeing a proliferation on a more wider sense across the county in locations like industrial parks, which we have seen historically, but the existing LDP and this proposed new one is all about ensuring that doesn't occur in the future.
Councillor Will Thomas.
Thanks, Presiding Member. First of all, thanks to the working group. It's been very helpful and very interesting to see the amount of data and everything that's involved in the decisions that you got to make. So very interesting. Just 2 points or questions, really. First one is, will there be an opportunity for individual ward members to have a private, chat with the team about the sites in their ward? And secondly, school catchment areas. Now, I know it's a bit of a hot potato, can be, but I think when you're looking at building number of properties in and around, well, anywhere really, that the school catchment areas should really be thought about, and I don't think they are enough. They don't seem to ever be brought up, and they should be brought up at this stage because it affects so many people. So just wondering if there's any changes on that as well. Thank you.
Okay, so in relation to ward members, engaging with the process of consultation on all the documents, the team will always be there and available for those sorts of queries to be brought forward. The individual sites that will be assessed in detail over the course of the this year and into next, as we move towards a detailed plan, that work needs to be done without prejudice, really, and on the basis of the evidence that is submitted and the extent to which, as I mentioned earlier, these sites accord with our strategy. So there's quite a sort of factual analysis really of these sites. That's what's going to happen over the course of this year. I would highlight that there is a methodology available to you that makes clear how these sites will be assessed. So that doesn't take away from the fact that any interested party, local resident or member can ask any queries about how that process is going and about the nature of the process. Also, if there's particular information that you think can be submitted to help the process of assessment, then again that is able to be able to be submitted. So the door is always open to those kind of conversations and exchange of information. But it is as I say, a technical assessment process that will be undertaken. In relation to school catchments, the LDP process won't be recommending or be the decision mechanism for any changes to school catchments, but the existing catchments do feed in to the process of assessment. They also feed in through our very close working with the Education Department on decisions that are made about the allocation of sites and the development of policy in the area of education provision. Because it's not just about the allocation of individual development sites, it's about what the plan holistically can do, really, in terms of facilitating the council's agenda in respect of, enhancing and delivering new schools. So it's an example, really, of where the planning authority works very closely with other service areas of the council in delivering this plan.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Thank you, Tom, for the report. A couple of things I'm not too sure about at the moment in terms of general questions, really, in that the plan proposes, as I see it, the provision of another 11,500 homes approximately. Is that over and above what was identified in the LDP, or is it, are those figures to a certain extent already included in that? So what I'm looking for is a number of increased residences required, I guess. The other thing I'm not sure about as well is that in terms of the LDP, in terms of what was proposed in that, in terms of new house building and completion, where are we in respect in terms of what has already been built, what is already in the process of being built, and how much is in the planning process, which at the end of the day will indicate whether we're meeting the targets of the LDP or how far short we are of it at this current time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the short answer, really, in terms of the provision of new homes, you've identified the figure in that respect. That relates to the year of the new plan. So it's 2023 to 2038, 15-year plan period. So it can be looked at in isolation from the existing plan. This is all about the figure for that plan period. So 2023 is the base year from when the evidence began to be collected. So already homes are being delivered over that plan period. That's the best way to look at it, is to always look at the plan date. And that's what that figure relates to. So we are planning for a number of homes, a number of jobs over that specific 15-year plan period. In relation to where are we in the process of delivering an existing plan, that's something that we bring to planning committee every year by way of the annual monitoring reports, and they're available publicly. They're on the website, and that sets out how we are delivering on the trajectories, scheduled trajectories, and the targets of the existing plan. And it's been one of the features of the existing LDP where levels of delivery are well below what was targeted for at the outset of the current LDP, and what those reports have highlighted that is something that is not unique to Swansea at all. It's being experienced right across Wales and across the UK in terms of delivery of new homes. But what this new plan has needed to do, as I say, is identify what is the best available evidence for what will happen from now and over the next 15 years in terms of population, how will it grow, what will happen in terms of migration, what will happen in terms of how Swansea will grow economically, numbers of jobs and so on, and we must plan for that. That's what the new plan needs to do, and that's what these targets relate to.
Councillor May.
Thank you. Firstly, on behalf of the Uplands Group, I'd like to thank you for all the hard work that's gone in so far with the engagement sessions. I realised from the previous LDP what a Herculean task it is, from identifying the candidate sites, all the various stages that it goes through, and I know we had some robust debate on a particular policy, but you know, that was just a small part of the plan. Question I want to ask you is really about sort of timescales. In June 2016, there was a report from the Research Service of the Welsh Assembly government, as it was then, where Swansea said that they were optimistic of you know, submitting the adoption in December 2016. It did a table of the relative progress of all authorities. Rhondda Cullen Tafford submitted theirs in March 2011. In reality, I think we submitted or adopted in February 19, I think, with the adoption of the last LDP. Now, I note that on your table, we've already had a revised timescale, and I see we're looking at the same screen. Bear in mind, you've got all these complex tasks and everything. How optimistic are you of actually delivering it and keeping to time in December 2027? Are there any pitfalls that exist, and how could members help smooth the process along for you?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair question. It's the reason, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the delivery agreement needing to be adjusted, was for that reason, as I say, to reflect what is happening elsewhere in terms of these LDP reviews and replacements. I think where we've pitched it, this is a 5-year delivery. From the beginning of 2023 through till adoption at the end of 27. There has been a huge range, as you've identified there, in terms of how long some councils have taken to adopt theirs, and unfortunately some have never even got to adoption along the way for some complex reasons. So the advantage that we have in Swansea now is that we have an existing LDP that is working very well. We've covered the issue of delivery of homes, which is as I say, is a national issue. But the majority, all the monitoring work has shown that the majority of proposals and policies of the plan are green. In terms of their monitoring flag status, so they are being successfully delivered, and on that basis, what we are going through is producing a replacement plan that's building on a successful existing. The existing plan is, I must say, a very well regarded one across Wales. We were the first really to take forward and really put at the heart of the plan a placemaking and master planning approach to new sites coming forward, very proactive on that basis, and building in a lot of the agendas of very new and very sort of profoundly different agendas that are coming through the planning system. We built that into the plan. And well received because of that. So we are going through a process of needing to respond to further changes that occurred, but we are building on a very solid foundation. So I think that is going to help in terms of our time frame, and that's why I think it's a realistic one in terms of the adjustments that we made. When it comes to the latter stages of the process, after sort of submission of the plan, we do get into the public inquiry or the public examination stages, and those are marked as indicative because it gets beyond our control to an extent in terms of how the Welsh Government and agencies like the Planning Inspectorate will take that forward. So the short answer to the question is that we think we made the right adjustments to the timetable now, and it's important to have a focus for the deposit plan to get there as soon as possible next year, and to come back to council with a document that can be considered for public consultation.
Thank you, Tom. There are no more questions. David, did you want to come back?
No, nothing to add to the report.
David, sorry. I didn't see David's hand.
Just wanted to comment, Chairman, that the leader's fears about the absence of Councillor Fitzgerald on the involvement and consideration of the LDP seem to be entirely unfounded. Length, time, never mind.
Councillor Hopkins, do you want to come back?
Nothing to add to the report. It has been moved. What I would like to say, Tom is more than welcome to stay for the rest of the council if he wanted, but I'm sure he will escape.
I'm sure he'd love to escape.
but I will give some reassurance to members that this is the start of the process. There's a long way to do, a lot of work to be done, but we will get through it together, and we will. Obviously, they are ambitious plans. Make no apology for that, because I think we're all ambitious in this chamber and want the best of the city. So just again, thanks again, Tom.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. There are 5 recommendations. I'm going to take them all as one, but there is an amendment to number 5, which is to include the reference to the revised LDP2 delivery agreement. So all those in favour of the report? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Next item, and that's the adoption. Oh, sorry, I need to call people back in because they've left the chamber. If somebody can, Scarlett's gone to get them, is he? They've gone to sleep, I think, bless them. Okay. Okay, we move on then to item 8, and that's the adoption, item 9, sorry, and that's the adoption of the council tax reduction scheme. And can I call on Mr. Ben Smith, please?
Thank you, presiding member. I will be as brief as I can on what is one of those annual procedurals around the adoption of the council tax reduction scheme. Whilst there's a report in my name, once I've finished, I will be calling on relevant members to propose and second the 5 recommendations in front of you in the report, which effectively put into force the annual requirement by the 31st of January to re-adopt the national scheme locally and to consider any discretions that you wish to apply. There is no overall change as a result of the discussions in the Senedd, bar some uprating to the annual indexation of calculations for eligibility and thresholds, but nonetheless they have to be reapplied locally and the discretions reapplied locally, otherwise the whole scheme falls to the default scheme. On the basis that you are required to adopt it by the 31st of January, I breathe a sigh of relief that it went through the Senedd only a couple of days ago, and that you are in time to make the adoption as required. As set out in section 1.7, it is incumbent upon me to come and tell you all the things that were changed if the Senedd decided to change anything. You will breathe a sigh of relief once again this year that I am not intending to need to take you through any material adjustments. We do consult periodically, but not all the time, and certainly not when there are no changes to the proposed scheme. And the reality is, in terms of the 3 discretions that we consider we have limited powers over, it is safe to say that 2 of them are very finely balanced, and one of them, the war widows disregard and the war disablement one, are both supported by the majority of respondents. I'm not obliged to go out and consult again, as I say, because the scheme has not changed from that adopted last year, other than you are legally required to adopt it. In forming a view, and in terms of the discretions available, It is clear that a significant part of the council tax reduction scheme falls locally to general taxpayers. If you are more generous to one group than another, because council tax reduction scheme grant funding is fixed in the revenue support grant, you just transfer costs between local taxpayers, and the costs are significant as set out in section 5.3 in the table in 5.2 in terms of both the cost that the council locally has to subsidise, but perhaps more importantly recognising the intent of the scheme, given that council tax is a large bill and not the most popular of bills, it has to be said, that there is an estimate of about £26 million worth of council tax reduction scheme being made available to reduce those on the lower incomes liability for council tax, and in the vast majority of cases, over 17,000 of the just under 21,000 in receipt in the current year, a reduction to nil on their liability for council tax, and it is that bit which is particularly important. As I say, it's a procedural device to get it on the record so that the scheme continues to give relief to the poorest in our society. And I would advise that members move the scheme to enable me to put it into effect for billing in due course for the 1st of April. I have made appropriate arrangements in my working papers, both those that were submitted to Cabinet on the 10th of January and which will be submitted through in February and then to yourselves in March for budget setting, to afford the scheme as set out in the proposals in front of you. I have nothing further to add other than to seek an approver and a seconder, please. Thank you, Chair, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay, can I have a mover and second?
Presiding Member, very happy to move the report.
Thank you. Second.
Very happy to second.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and there are 5 recommendations, which I'm going to take all as one. So all in favour of the report? Anybody against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Smith. The next item is the Coordinated School Admissions Arrangement Scheme, and can I call on Councillor Robert Smith?
Yes, thank you, Presiding Member. This scheme, as outlined, will enable us to comply with the regulations that were passed in June 2024. It will simplify the mechanics of school admissions, and I'm very happy to move the report.
Please.
Very happy to second, Chair.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. So can I have a show of hands in favour of the report, please? Anybody against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Okay, thank you. That's carried. Okay. Next item is item 11, and that's the pay policy statement. And can I call on Councillor David Hopkins, please?
Thanks, Presiding Member.
Hang on, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, David. Okay.
Thanks, Presiding Member. More than happy to, the report is before us. There are some technical changes to what is normally brought to us today. So I'm more than happy to hand over to Martin to take us through the report. We've also got Amy online, who is also there to give some support if needed.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Presiding Member. Just briefly to give you the key aspects of the changes. You will receive each year, and you're required to approve the pay policy annually. That's attached at Appendix A. The reason for speaking today is a specific change which I wanted to draw your attention to that affects chief officers. What we uncovered is when we were having the review of the Chief Officer Job Evaluation Scheme, the LGA who were undertaking that scheme provided some advice that the existing pay bands were both too broad, wide, and also overlapped, and we should take the opportunity when it arose to review that and to rationalise the number of spinal column points. So the report hopefully sets out in paragraphs 7 onwards as to the changes that are suggested. And essentially, what you will see is the pay bands currently for chief officers range from 7 points to 9 points. And the advice is to bring it in line with the substantive scheme, you shouldn't have more than 5 spinal column points. The second point to note is, and you'll see by the example under paragraph 9, that between band 1 and band 2, you will see that there's an overlap at the bottom end of the scale with the top end of the band 2. So in all intents and purposes, you could find somebody appointed to a lower band who's actually paid a higher salary, which doesn't seem appropriate. So the suggestion as outlined in the report is to remove the spinal column points, and they are identified in paragraph 12. And that effectively takes points 1 and 2 from the director's band, points 1 and 2 from the heads of service band 1 and 2, and then reducing 2 off the bottom and 2 off the top of the chief officer pay band. It is quite a rare occurrence that we're in a position where there aren't any substantive staff in any of those points at the moment. And therefore, one of the reasons why, particularly bringing it to your attention now, is that would mean that there'd be nobody suffering detriment from that. Obviously, if we appoint to those roles in the meantime, then although that's unlikely, then that may change slightly. We do have some staff who are in those roles on a temporary basis, but we'd expect them to be returning back to the substantive role shortly. So it is, in my view, an ideal opportunity. And there is a slight saving overall in terms of the amendment to the chief officer pay band, and when that role gets advertised shortly. And just finally to confirm, this would bring the number of spinal column points to 5 in each of those bands, in line with the recommendations and in line with the substantive scheme that affects all of the staff. So it's being brought in line with that, it's not deviating from that. And secondly, consultation has taken place with both the affected staff and the trade unions or staff have not raised any objections in that regard. Happy to take any technical questions.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Okay, any questions for anybody? No? Can I have somebody to move and second?
Happy to move.
Second?
Happy to second, Chair.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. So can I have a show of hands in favour of the report, please? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. We move on to the next item then, and that's item 12, and that's the panel performance assessment arrangements. And again, can I call on you, Martin, please?
Chair, it's actually me at this one.
No
problem. Yes, Chair, this one, the PPA is a peer review arrangement that has been put in place by Welsh Government. It is now our turn. A number of councils have already been through this, but I will pause at this stage, given the fact that this is a report which will review the administration elements to bring the chief executive in. One thing I would say to the report that we have there, that if council are minded to agree this, it would be done in conjunction and in discussion with the group leaders. That is the intention.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Presiding Member. Very briefly, as the report sets out, it is an obligation, a requirement of the Local Government Elections Act that we undertake a panel performance assessment once per electoral term. We have decided to go this June just because it feels an appropriate time, and a number of other councils are doing the same. It allows us to receive then the feedback from that review and implement changes if there are any recommendations over the next 12 months or so. The review, as is outlined in the report, really focuses on 3 aspects. It seeks to establish the effectiveness of the council exercising its functions, efficiency and economic use of our resources, and are our governance arrangements effective for securing those 2 objectives. What does it matter? Well, we have to do it. The legislation dictates we have to do it. But what we are suggesting is it's an opportunity not to be wasted. So making sure that we take the opportunity of leveraging quite an extensive amount of external peer support, which is free, so there isn't a charge for it. It's organised by the WLGA. It allows us to look at that continuous improvement option and also gains insights into both operational effectiveness and comparability with other local authorities. And then it's dependent on stakeholder engagement as well. In terms of what's involved, the timescales that we're working to, the preparation is ongoing at the moment, hence the report tonight. We will then be looking to finalise the scope of the review, and we are able to look at a small number, perhaps 3 or even 4, of specific areas that we would like the panel to look at in addition to the general governance and management of the organisation. And we are considering those at the moment, but they've not been finalised. Also looking at appointing the panel. And then looking at setting those arrangements up. The assessment will take place during the first week in June, 3rd to the 6th of June. Will involve obviously a review of the desk-based information provided, consultation with stakeholders, and then on-site assessments and focus groups and discussions. And many of you in this room would be involved in those discussions. And then the presentation of findings will take place. And then within about a month or so, we would then receive the outcome of the review with the recommendations. And then we will need to report back via Governance and Audit Committee as to our response to those recommendations. As the leader said, one of the things we are keen to do is ensure there's both cross-council visibility, hence tonight, but also involvement. So intention would be, even though the recommendation is delegating the finalisation of the scope and the detail to myself and the leader, we'd very much welcome that conversation with group leaders in terms of both the scope and then the process that we're going to follow. So happy to deal with any technical questions. Thank you.
Somebody to move and second the report, please.
Yep. Formally move, Chair.
Thank you, David. Okay. Any questions? Councillor Phillips.
Given that this has been trialled and the money that it's going to cost and the disruption and expense within a local authority it's going to lead to, all of which would have been spent on services, have the trials actually produced any improvement in the delivery and operation of council services?
We're best to respond to that, Councillor. The reality is there's, I think, 3 or 4 councils have gone through it. There's a number scheduled during this year. In the discussions I've certainly had with the chief execs who've been through it, they've reported positive outcome and positive feedback. There's no direct cost to the council, but ultimately there is a cost to, Welsh public sector. If it's being funded via the WLJ, the cost is being picked up from somewhere. The reality is the statute was determined by Welsh Government. We haven't got any choice but to do it. I think if there's concerns about that, representations to Welsh Government are probably the more appropriate way forward on that. But look, any sort of, as you will be aware, any sort of peer review or any sort of external assessment is really only as good as, first of all, the people undertaking that, and secondly, the approach the council takes. And I think it's important, and I hope the report sets that out. The scope is going to be really important to make sure that, there is a cost to us, albeit not to us, that we maximise the benefit and the outcomes from that review and use that learning to hopefully make the council as efficient as it can be.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, Chair, likewise in my discussions with leaders of the council that have been through it, they found it a positive experience. It has provided benefits to those councils in terms of learnings. And again, this process might be new to other councils. It isn't to us. We've been through peer reviews. In fact, we initiated peer reviews back in, I think, 2015 and 2016 and found those useful, even though we weren't compelled to do it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. There are 3 recommendations. I'll take them as read. So all in favour of the report, please. Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's moved. Thank you very much. The next item is membership of committees. Councillor David Hopkins. Oh, sorry, I've jumped one. Sorry, my fault. Item 13 it is, sorry. The nomination of the Deputy Lord Mayor for 24-25 and the Lord Mayor-elect and Deputy Lord Mayor-elect for 25-26. And can I call on Mr Evans, please?
Thank you, presiding members. My report's effectively in 4 parts. Following the recent and sad death of Councillor Wendy Fitzgerald, there's a vacancy for a Deputy Lord Mayor, so it recommends that Councillor Sheriff Philpott fill that role. She was next in line, and then she would go on to become Lord Mayor-elect in 25-26. Councillor Penny Matthews to become the Deputy Lord Mayor-elect 25-26. And also a slight amendment to paragraphs 15 to 18 in the protocol. They are minor amendments. I don't intend to go through them in detail, but I'm willing to answer any questions should you have any.
Can I move the report, Chair?
Second?
Happy to second.
Okay. It's been
Chair, I believe we were going to split the nomination so that Councillor Holly could nominate the Deputy Lord Mayor, and I would
Okay,
nominate.
I'll nominate Councillor Cheryl Philpott as Deputy Lord Mayor.
Okay. Do I need to take a vote on that? Or? Somebody seconded? Yeah? I got about 4 hands going up now, so it doesn't matter which one it is. Okay, so you're all in favour?
Yes,
You're all in
seconded,
favour
sorry.
of that, yes?
I was asleep.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
seconded motion.
Thank you. You're all in favour?
And Chair, sorry, I was going to nominate Penny Matthews, and it gives me great pleasure to do so.
And I'm going to, great pleasure to nominate Councillor Penny Matthews.
All in favour? Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's moved and seconded and voted on and it's all unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to the next item. Item 14 has been taken out. So we move on to the item 15, which is membership of committees. Councillor David Hopkins, please.
Yeah, another one. Yeah, thanks, Presiding Member. Much appreciated. The report before you today. More than happy to move the report as submitted.
Very happy to second, Chair.
Again, it's been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's been carried. We'll next is item 16, which is councillors' questions. I will remind you it's 30 minutes, okay? And we've got roughly 12 questions, so it's roughly 2.5 to 3 minutes per question. So if you can be brief, we'll get more questions answered. Okay, so the first one is the least. Let's get to the page. And that the first one is from Councillor Peter Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the answer on the e-scooter trial. I am still perturbed that we have actually volunteered to do this trial. I've been to cities where e-scooters are used, and often you're falling over them on pavements and things. And of course, there is a danger to people when they drive. I'm just wondering what the reason was with going. It doesn't seem to be clear. And I would urge the council to withdraw from this trial. It does appear to me to be a potential danger to our citizens.
Thank you, Chair, Presiding Member. Thank you, for Councillor Black, for the question. So just as I said in my response in terms of this, there's still no decision has been made on whether to introduce e-scooters in Swansea, and it was part of a broader package for around micromobility and e-bikes and bikes and the possible benefits of all that in terms of what we applied for. Yes, we did apply expression of interest to the DFT to accept new trial areas, but there's still a load of other hurdles that will come as part of that. Councillor Black, in terms of that Welsh Government need to enable legislation around it, and only once that there'll be some follow-on engagement done with members and community groups and things like that. Only once that we're satisfied with that will we consider oppositions.
Can I ask, Chair, when we get to the stage where a decision is to be made, will it come back to members so we can have a proper discussion about that? You see, I am still concerned about it. I nearly broke my ankle in Seattle on one of these scooters.
Yes, I'd be more than happy to sort that. In fact, I'll go one step further in that. I'll ensure the team organise an engagement session with all members relatively soon, and it'll encompass e-bikes, bikes and e-scooters as well, around micromobility, the potential benefits of that, and where we go next.
Okay, the next question is from Councillor Leslie Walton. Any supplementaries? No supplementaries. Okay. Oh,
My employer's in receipt of coast funding, so it's a declaration of interest.
okay. The next question is from Councillor Francesca O'Brien.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Thank you to the Leader and the Cabinet Member for their response with regards to the 1 hour's free parking that businesses and members have requested for. We actually shared the response with the businesses this week, and to say they're disappointed is an understatement, and I'm happy to share their response with you via email outside of the meeting. But just for the purpose of the meeting, they are interested in the definition of significant on-street parking as described in the response. And secondly, looking at this issue, if you go on the council website, we've got 14 suburban car parks located in Swansea, all of which are free to use. If you combine the 14 car parks all together, there's over 750 free car parking spaces, which is fantastic. I wouldn't want to see that be taken away from them, but those 750 car parking spaces free throughout the city and suburban areas are benefiting local businesses, libraries, and so forth, and even the train station in Gowerton. So when Mumbles traders are told that they're not supported in a 1 hour's free parking space, is it a postcode lottery? And the question is, would the leader want to reconsider his support for this proposal, given that it's 100% more on the tariffs in Mumbles on the parking compared to the city centre? Thank you.
Peter?
Yeah, I mean, very happy to have further discussions with members and businesses in Mumbles. I think where we left it last was that we had offered the businesses in Mumbles to come up with alternative schemes that potentially were workable. I know the chair of the Mumbles Traders Association, I believe, has written to me recently, and I have offered to meet him. I believe I was also requested on social media to meet members down there. I've also offered them to write to me and come in for a meeting, which they haven't picked up as yet. But I think the critical point, I think, where there is perhaps a misunderstanding is that the data we have shows that the car parks are primarily full. And that seems to be the issue where the disconnect occurs, because even if you were charging nothing for them, you can't get more cars into a car park that's already full. So if that is the case, how are you going to improve the visits to Mumbles and the capacity? I think, you know, in terms of increasing capacity, as the fantastic work on the Mumbles seawall concludes, which I know everybody's pleased about, that means that the tennis court, the old tennis courts area, is out for consultation in terms of whether that potentially could be part car parking or full car parking. It's a decision for the businesses and the residents of Mumbles to make their voices known there. And of course, the compound, which is up near the quarry, will also come back into play. So by the time we get to the middle of this year, or certainly before the autumn, hopefully those two spaces will be available for consideration for parking, and certainly the quarry can be reinstated relatively quickly. And that will add to the capacity around Mumbles. But you know, the simple physics of it is, if you've got an already full car park, regardless of what you charge for it, you're not going to get more cars into it. And that, I think, is the real challenge there. If members have ideas for additional spaces that could become car parking areas, that potentially could help. But again, I don't think we've been able to identify any of those over many years in terms of areas that could potentially become car parking spaces. And I know the debate is raging in Mumbles at the moment about whether you want more play areas or more green space or more parking space. And I think that debate will continue. I hope that we get a clear steer from the residents and businesses about what they want.
Sorry, just a quick question on that. Did the other wards have to jump through all these hoops as well to get the spaces? And I think what we're asking for is just 30 minutes to an hour for residents, free parking. That's all it is. That's all it is in a nutshell.
I think the arrangements elsewhere are historic and they vary from place to place. I think the difference as well, these are foreshore car parks, so they're destination car parks. They aren't urban car parks in terms of some of the other locations I think Councillor O'Brien mentioned. So they are slightly different. And again, I think the point is made. If there was a difficulty with churn, so if we were, for instance, having 3 car parks where we had car parking charges where people were not using them and they were empty, then I think changing the frequency and the tariff might be of benefit. But if you already have full capacity or near full capacity on the car parks, if you change that, you're not going to improve the usage because it's already primarily full.
Councillor Chris Evans?
Yeah, I was just thinking, would a park and ride scheme from the rec or the university during holidays help with the problems at Mumbles?
I think we've already explored that. One of the things that we're looking forward to with the new Welsh Government bus bill is exerting control over bus services in our locality. South West Wales will be the first region of Wales, as you know from your briefing earlier, to enjoy bus franchising. One of the things that it may enable us to do as part of that is to look at further park and ride opportunities. And again, maybe even a different way of doing park and ride, which is more dispersed and may give much greater flexibility to members of the public who wish to park in loads of different locations and jump on a bus as part of that ticketing option.
Councillor Will Thomas. I go Will first, please, Francesca.
Thanks, Presiding Member. And yeah, I agree with Councillor Evans. I mean, we did, the Cabinet Member, the leader and us before the seawall, we did look at the park and ride. And I think the reason given by the events team was that they were not confident that they could give up the rec. Something I didn't agree with personally, and I think that should be explored more in the future because it would solve a big issue. I know the leaders obviously had a meeting about the quarry car park, but I would be keen to see that developed as just like Tenby. They've got a long stay car park, multi-storey, tucked away in the quarry, and I do think that's also something that can and should be explored, even though it's not straightforward. So I just wanted to get those on record. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Chair. Could I just make a point on the development of the car park and in the quarry? Councillor Thomas and I have had an exchange on that. I am due to send him some detailed information on behalf of our planners and others. That is a site which is incredibly difficult to develop. It has links to SSI and other stuff which will be difficult, if not impossible, to overcome. And there are other constraints in terms of the previous times that we've sought market interest in that. The obstacles to developing it have been so great that nobody has taken it forward. But again, I have promised to give Councillor Thomas that information so he has it to hand.
Jessica.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Only very quickly, because I know we've probably gone over the 2.5 minutes, but if we can look at the usage, perhaps in early hours of the morning. I know it sounds really daft, but even people just going off to the post office, getting their coffee in the morning, after the school run. So I appreciate that the usage of the car parks may be high during, say, 10 till 4, but perhaps maybe there could be a concession at early hours or later into the evening. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is from Councillor Peter May.
Hello, the Councillor Rice for this one.
Thank you. Though the leader's response makes interesting reading, it's not really what I asked directly about. I asked about this leaflet that's here, which featured, which I read with interest as well, because it featured the uplands on the front and a cycle lane, and on the back it had 24 promises. There's been some progress. I will give you that. Some of those things have been ticked off the list, or you're making progress against them. But unfortunately, quite a few of them are still haunted by discussions and artist impressions, and they haven't seemed to have made much progress. There are two that I particularly wanted to ask about. Number one is more of a principle for 25 in 25, is about your first and top priority, which was investing in schools. Can this year we please invest more in schools estate than we do in offices going forward? And number two, as a question for the leader, in terms of the Debenhams store, I know with bated breath we all await for the tenants which are about to sign up and to come in for it. Can we ensure that those tenants aren't just being moved from other places in the city into Debenhams and leaving empty spaces elsewhere?
Bit rich of Councillor Rice, who was part of the previous administration that did vast amounts of artist impressions without very little delivery to make that statement. I think very, very unwise. And of course, he was a Liberal Democrat at the time, so before he rebadged himself. So on the 2 points he makes, I think, again, as a previous Cabinet Member for Finance, he might have looked at the capital programme, because actually the largest amount of money we spend out of the capital programme goes in to our schools, and that's the way it has been. It is a record programme. I think the last amount we had was about 179 million. I don't know if Mr. Smith is on the call, he can probably correct me in terms of the actual figure, but I think it's around 175 million was the last figure for the investment in schools. We are about to continue that discussion with Welsh Government about the next phase of schools investment, and that is going to be a significant sum. And I know Education Officers and Councillor Smith are in discussions on that at the moment. So, you know, the programme for schools that we've delivered this term has been the biggest ever. And of course, when you add together the money going into schools every year, it's over £1 billion worth that we committed to at the start of the election period. And that is what will be delivered before the end of our term. So I think on that one, we will and have met it. On the second one on Debenhams, of course, it's very easy to say that we don't want vendor A or retailer A and retailer B. The market has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. The high street has changed dramatically over the recent past as well. We know that the latest potential casualty is WH Smith. They've announced that they're looking for a new buyer for their stores across the UK as they move to focus on airports. We will wait to see whether that how that plays out. But our whole aim within the city centre has to be to retain those vendors and retailers that haven't failed nationally, because again, we've been hit by Debenhams, Topman, Dorothy Perkins, Burton's, you name it. All of those failed nationally. They didn't fail just in Swansea. And of course, Debenhams, the sad news about Debenhams was that actually was trading really well as a store out of their whole estate. So it was one of the ones that was really doing well. So the administration was faced with a challenge at the time, which is, for those of you who don't know the details in terms of the ownership, the council owns a third of the quadrant in terms of the most of the footprint of the quadrant. So it is in our interest, especially for those people who take units in the quadrant, to have that core, the Debenhams footprint, which was separately owned, to be functioning. There was a real risk that that would just lay empty for years and years and years. So we didn't feel that that was the right thing to do. And that's why we stepped in with the help of the Welsh Government to purchase that building. Obviously, when you step in to do that, you then have to seek a way of then reletting it. What we've been doing, and the officers should be commended for this, they have been working with agents to look at what that significant building, which is over 160,000 square feet. For those of you who've not been through the building, it's actually a 4-storey building, but was never used as 4 stories when Debenhams operated it. We've been looking at how best to do that. Now, there aren't very many retailers left in the UK that could take a building of that size in one chunk. So the reality of the marketplace at the moment is you're going to have to split that building into multiple users. That means reconfiguring parts of the quadrant to do it. It means working with those potential vendors to do that. We've made really good progress with the 3 parties who are interested in taking that. 2 of them are national retailers. One of them is a leisure retailer, because again, if you look at other cities around the UK, you will see that some of the space within existing shopping centres has been turned over to leisure use. You'll see people offering golf and other activities in there. So we are well on our way to that. We are hopeful that we can announce the first of those tenants in due course. But as you will appreciate, the order will be for us to agree the legal arrangements and the contractual arrangements with those vendors. That takes time. We then begin the strip out work to reconfigure the building, and then the vendors will come in with their fit out work. So the position, to answer Councillor Rice's question directly, is I am not able to say whether those vendors, and I wouldn't say at this stage because it may cross the line in terms of our confidentiality, whether they've had or have a city presence at the moment. But what I would say is what we're looking to do with those stores is to configure them in a way that suits the vendors' needs. That means that we can fill the Debenhams building with things that people want to see. And that in turn will help support those businesses already in the rest of the quadrant.
Thank you. In fairness to the leader, he has answered a part of the question there that I was coming in on, but I still haven't had a full answer on, do you plan to build any more offices going forward?
So again, if you look at the schools programme versus the offices programme, yes, the schools programme will continue to be by far the biggest bit. I think depends on which point you start, which point you end, but it will be probably in excess of 300 million in terms of that. That is not, we won't be building offices as a council that scale. We do have a strategic partnership, as you know, with Urban Splash to develop 7 sites across the city. That is valued at about 750 million, but that is the regeneration of the civic centre. That is unlikely to be offices. You have the St Thomas Station site. That is unlikely to be offices. Where we will need more offices is in and around Copper Bay, so the area around St Mary's, and there is a demand for offices. And again, I hope Councillor Rice will acknowledge when we do the formal handover and then the formal opening of 7172 Kingsway, that we will be able to demonstrate that the demand for quality office space in the city centre is proven beyond doubt. And that should give us confidence to deliver even more in due course, because we can take more jobs in Swansea. One of the issues that we have that other cities don't is that we have not been able to offer quality office space in Swansea, where other cities like London, Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds have over-provided for their offices, and now post-COVID they are seeing a contraction. We aren't in that position, so there will be more office space coming to Swansea because we want to base more companies here in the city.
I have got more questions, Councillor Rice. Do you need to come back?
One quick question.
Quickly then.
Who's paying for the public sector hub as we're only taking 1 of the 5 floors?
I think Councillor Rice is incorrect on that. In terms of the building, the configuration, as I understand it, would be retail as part of it. The council taking some space in it, UK government taking some space in it. We're still talking to Welsh government about them taking space. The actual floor spaces are still being worked through. But the reality being the council's preference is always to be in a building that it owns rather than the building that it rents. It makes sense for us to do that rather than pay somebody else as a landlord money. It was better that somebody's in our building paying us rent, because that is a benefit to the taxpayer.
Councillor Lewis.
Can the leader say if the previous administration delivered 24 schemes in their entire time in office? And I got a loud voice.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Look, we know that Councillor Rice and Councillor May were members of the previous administration in their previous guise as Liberal Democrats, and again, not one to point many things out, but I will acknowledge that the previous administration did deliver some things over their 8 years. They delivered a leisure centre, which I'm sure we'll be reminded of. They delivered this building's renovation, leaking now, but they did deliver it. They delivered a new. They delivered a new bus station, but they also did a few other things. They delivered jobs to Scotland when they outsourced them from Swansea. They delivered a bendy bus, which never really worked and was high polluting. They delivered.
We are way over the 2.5 minutes on this question.
They delivered children's services. They delivered children's services, Chair, into special measures. They delivered the restoration of the slip bridge, or no, they didn't do that. And I think one of their greatest achievements was, after 8 years of a bit of malaise and drift for Swansea, they delivered a very successful Labour administration and a resounding victory in 2012.
Yeah. Councillor David Phillips, please be brief because we're way over the 2.5 minutes on this question. Yeah. It's good entertainment in this chamber at times, you know. Pardon?
Because you have the, you're the authority, are we going to have all the questions?
We didn't do it. They did it. David, did you need to speak, David? Councillor Phillips? No? Right, we're moving on to the next one then. And it's from Councillor Mary Jones.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and I have to bring some sort of frivolity. Thank you, Cabinet Member, for the response, and I know that you are as concerned about this as I am. And I want to ask you a question. Paragraph 2, says the new guidance outlines expectations of the LA to ensure an initial visit, a 3-month visit, and at least one annual visit. Now, we know that didn't happen, or it happened and they weren't able to gain access in this very, very sad case. How new is this guidance? Because I understand in England they're reviewing the guidance and they're going to issue further guidance. Are we in that position? And I was very pleased to see a little bit further down that if there's a child in a special school, then the local authority has the authority to approve the request. Unfortunately, for any other child, we don't have that authority. And is it something that is ever going to be looked at? Because, you know, if a child has been perhaps on the at-risk register or whatever, how on earth do we get around that? Thank you.
I think the main the key to this is the very last sentence at all safeguarding is everyone's business, and I think that's the approach we will be taking in Swansea. In terms of your question about the guidance, I'll come back to you with a definitive answer on that question. But I think we all share the concerns about this issue. There have been tragic events elsewhere, and it's not just the case that's been highlighted in the question. There are a number of issues and a number of cases that have come up over the years that do give rise to serious concerns. We've got a team of dedicated officers fulfilling this role, and I think if the role needs to be changed, I think that needs to be a national discussion and a national policy.
Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, thank you to the Cabinet Member for the answer. And I'm sure that around the Chamber, we wouldn't want to be restricting the opportunity for parents to have their children homeschooled. And in many cases, we know that it's to the benefit of some children to be homeschooled. And neither are we suggesting that those children that are homeschooled are in any form of danger. But I just want to ask a couple of practical questions, really. One would be in relation to, do we know the number of children in Swansea who are being homeschooled? And secondly, we are appreciative of the work of the EHE team. And I just wonder how many people there are in that team and whether the Cabinet Member is satisfied that we have enough people within that team to support the children who are being homeschooled and to address the issues which might occur.
Obviously, numbers change and they fluctuate, but we have seen figures in the last few months. We've reviewed the size of the team in the last few months, and we will continue to do so.
Okay, thank you. The next is from Councillor Andrew Williams.
No supplementary, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Ooh, oh, sorry, Councillor Back.
Thank you, Chair. Just reference to the public sector hub, which is referred to in this question. The leader has said both here and in scrutiny committee that this is going to be built by the council. Can I ask, will there be a provision in the capital programme for in the next budget, which we'll be discussing in a month's time, to actually make a start on this development?
Yes, obviously, if we're to be on site building the building in the timescales we've outlined, then yes, provision will need to be made within the capital programme for that. And that is something that Cabinet will bring forward as a report in due course.
Councillor May.
Thank you. Following on from Councillor Rice's, this 24 to 24 leaflet, we've already got a 25 to 25 leaflet here, so no doubt he'll be scrutinising that probably this time next year, actually. Anyway, the question is on St Helens. Uplands Ward members welcome the Ospreys coming to St Helens. It's saying achieve the ambition of playing in a 2025 to 26 season. A little bit of process here. I mean, we've got the Ospreys sort of asking people to sign up and pay £50 deposits and everything. Has is a planning application imminent to actually start the process going in construction? Have we got any indicative timelines, please?
Thank you. I'll take this one, given that it's more on the finance side. Essentially, Cabinet has agreed a conditional arrangement with the Ospreys, and the conditions there are clear. They need to be satisfied before the Ospreys can begin works. Obviously, depending on what works the Ospreys wish to carry out, some of those will require a planning application. Obviously, it'll be for the Ospreys to bring that forward. So that is all pretty clear. I think one of the things that we want to ensure as a council is there are many moving parts to this. Obviously, we've got cricket there and there. They've got their 150th anniversary. They're coming to the end of their season. A new wicket will need to be agreed in another location and made sure that's ready to play. The Ospreys, obviously, and their fixtures at one location and the other, depending on the start and end of the seasons. Implementation of a new pitch, if that's what the Ospreys seek to do. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. We just want to make sure that no party is disenfranchised as part of all of those bits moving. But clearly, if the Ospreys' intent, which I think is clear, to create a new stadium there fit for the fan base and to give them the fans a great experience, they will need to submit a planning application in due course.
To come back, and can we have an assurance of the leader? We're obviously excited about the prospect that there'll be consultation or involvement with local ward members as necessary, please.
Well, it's part of the planning process. All of the normal planning process arrangements and requirements will be followed.
Okay. The next is from Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Great, thanks. I'm borrowing Will's microphone here. Great, thanks very much for the reply. Obviously significant investment is being spent in the city centre to attract people. I think one of the great worries is we've heard over the last number of months that large companies now and shops are reducing the number of staff because of NI contribution. And we probably end up with the rug being pulled from under our feet, really, because all these things to succeed need people, and they won't have the spending money that they once had, and that is a real concern because we do need bodies back, people back in the city centre. So that is a real concern. So really, this great work that's being done, we could end up by having the rug pulled from under our feet because of that. But thank you for a detailed response.
So what exactly was your question?
I'm responding to your.
No, it's question time, not the response.
Responding. So what?
No, we do the response. You do the questions. I'm trying to be helpful because it's question time. I just want to know if there was a question.
Okay, I'm going to move on because we're nearly at the end of the 30 minutes. So, okay. Okay, the next one is from Councillor
Chair,
Chris
Mr.
Holly.
Smith has his hand up.
Councillor Holly, any question? Yeah.
Chair, Ben Smith has had his hand up for quite a time. I don't know if you wanted to comment on a question that was raised before.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't see you. Sorry, Councillor Jones. Oh, it's Ben, is it? Sorry, Mr. Smith, sorry, did you need to come in?
Thank you, Presiding Member, and apologies for interjecting. It's to go back to question 6, and I just wanted as a point of practical procedure, because it was the exchange between Councillor Black and the leader around what items will or won't be in the capital budget, which is coming to Council in March. I just wanted to make sure there was no misunderstanding between members and the Chamber that capital can be approved either by approval at Council on the 5th, 6th of March this year, or by the usual procedures available through financial procedure rules to go via Cabinet. I don't normally intervene on councillor questions because it's your session, but I just wanted to make sure that both options were kept open, because I thought there might be a risk of some misunderstanding between the exchange between members. So my apologies for coming in, and my thanks for being allowed to speak on that matter. You'll see more in due course when we come to the council budget setting on capital in early March. Thank you, Presiding Member.
My apologies to you, Mr. Smith. I didn't see your hand. Sorry. We're on Chris's question. Was it Chris? Did you have a supplementary? Put your mic on, Chris.
In the response, the leader says about the confidential briefing note can be provided to members. I think at some stage we need to seriously do this for a number of reasons. I think it's not just about the projects that are being completed, but it's also about projects that are in the process now. I think to get for people to understand what was happening. I think that needs to happen, and sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Chair, don't disagree in terms of as soon as we're able to place the information in the public domain, where those figures are clear and the commercial confidentiality nature of those figures has reduced. That is something we will intend to do. As is referenced by Councillor Holly, we will share that information with colleagues in camera where we can't do it in public. But I would just have a word of caution on this one, because it is a vast capital programme. It has many elements to it, including schools, HRA, general regeneration and capital schemes. All of those have moving parts to them. Some are reprofiled, some making faster progress than intended, some making slightly slower progress than intended. So the capital programme itself is a living programme, and that's the point. So we can give a snapshot at a point in time. We are looking with officers to see what we can do to ensure that reprofiling is as accurate as possible and remains as accurate as possible. But it is a programme that runs to the hundreds of millions, so it is one that has a lot of elements to it. But the point that Councillor Holly makes is a good one, which is wherever possible, either in camera where we can't do it in public, or as soon as we're able to do it in public, we release that information. That is always the intent.
Thank you.
Okay, the 30 minutes are up. I am aware it's been 2 hours. We are due for a break, so I'm going to make it a natural break now, and we'll have the two notices of motion when we come back. Okay, so 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I'll give you 10 minutes. Okay.
I don't think that there are no amendments to this one.
No, it's just straightforward. Okay, folks, we're moving on to item 17, and that's the first notice of motion. And I'd like to call on Councillor Holly. Are you leading it, please?
Thank you very much, Presiding Member. I think that everyone in this chamber, when I say everyone in this chamber would agree that this rejection by the UK government that they would not compensate these ladies is a disgrace in many ways. And I'll say it from the beginning. I think that the fact that the amount of money involved for the compensation would have been so low, £3,000 maximum or £1,000, whichever, it actually pales in significance with the amount of money that people had lost. They would have lost tens of thousands of pounds. So I think that says it all. And the total cost, who's to say it should have been paid all at once? It could have been done over a period of time. So I think there's issues around that. But I think the fundamental issue about this is there was maladministration found by the Ombudsman. Now then, isn't it right and proper if this council was thought to be admitted as having maladministration, we would have had to have compensation, or there would have been people disciplined or whatever. Yet nothing of that has come forward. And that's the bit that really, really gets at me, is the fact that the UK government, and it has happened before, it happened in one or two other occasions, they've ignored something they set up back in the 70s because it doesn't suit them. And I feel that that's why this notice of motion is here. It is here because I think that we have to support the ombudsmans both locally and nationally, because they are the arbitrators. They're the ones that come forward and say, you've done wrong. But a government can turn around and say, oh, we don't care, and move on. And I think that's what's wrong. And that's why this notice of motion is here. And I sincerely hope that everybody in the chamber feels the same as I do, that this compensation should have been paid. But more importantly, the ombudsman should be respected for what they are. And that is the arbiter. Thank you.
Okay. I'm very happy to support this, the motion, because I think these ladies were promised that they would have support. So I'm very happy to second the proposal for this motion. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Gibbard.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm supporting this motion. I think it's a very good opportunity to restate our very clear position on this issue. We have already passed 2 motions, I believe, as a council. We've lit up the Guildhall purple in support of pension justice for Swansea women. One of those motions that I've just mentioned made me pension champion as part of that pension justice champion, and in that role I did help to organise a public meeting in this chamber last year. So it's really important, I think, that we do take the opportunity today to restate our very clear support for the 1950s born women. As I won't go over all the reasons why they deserve compensation. I think we've had that debate before, but as Councillor Holly states, you know, the public service ombudsman did find that there was maladministration, and there has been a precedent for compensation in these sort of cases before. But without labouring the point, as member champion for women, I really would like to emphasise the aspects of this case which really exemplifies the ongoing gender inequality in society. And this is such a clear example of how, unfortunately, women, especially older women, are often not taken seriously and felt that they can be ignored and not valued enough by society. 1950s born women are much likely to have earned far less over their lifetimes because of the gender pay gap, which persists to this day, but was even worse in the last 60 years, especially in some of the professions that many women will have worked in. They are likely to have taken career breaks and or reduced their hours due to caring responsibilities, having children of their own, and then in later life caring for elderly relatives, spouses and grandchildren. Many might have cashed in some of their pension pots to help fund these breaks and reduced hours. These women were planning for their retirement. They had all their financial ducks in a row, expecting to receive their pensions and to fund it. And then in many cases, they weren't just intending to retire for its own sake, but also to pick up more of those caring responsibilities that I've just talked about. So having finished work voluntarily, or in some cases effectively being forced out, it's been very difficult for women of this age to find alternative employment because of workplace gender and age discrimination. They may also face the individual health difficulties, making it impossible for them to continue to work in the sorts of jobs they did previously. It is really disappointing that the UK government now have not been able to find the compensation that they so richly deserve at this time, but it only goes to show the dire state of our country's finances after 14 years of Tory government and the unexpected black hole which was discovered by the government on taking office. So I would urge the Prime Minister and the Chancellor to look again at this. Hopefully, as we have growth in the economy, as we all are hoping for, we are able to right this wrong.
Councillor Rice.
Thank you. I'm in complete agreement with this motion, especially on the grounds of what Councillor Holly and others have said about the Ombudsman. I think it's a key point when you stand in an election and you campaign vigorously beforehand for something and not deliver it, that is always a big disappointment, and it's something politically I think is something that we should try and always avoid as politicians. I feel particularly sorry for MP Caroline Harris. She campaigned very vigorously before the election. Back in 2018, she was one of the main supporters of the WASPy women, and with her bill in 2018, the pensions private bill that she put through. It's a real pity that Labour hasn't stood by her and nationally, and the things that she was trying to deliver for the women, because she was a great champion for them. And it appears now they've sent her to New Zealand instead. But I really hope that we can all support this.
Mr. Stevens.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I echo the comments today, and particularly from my colleague, Councillor Gibbard here. I fully support this motion. In fact, I actually stood there in 2016, I think, in the public gallery and explained my reasonings back then. I stood SAFA there in 2019 when we delivered the motion to condemning the then Conservative government for their inaction on this, to be a presiding member. And I have to say we're 4, 5, 6 Prime Ministers on now, and just how disappointing it is that there's still no way forward. So I'm happy to support. Thanks.
Mr. Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. I think, again, be consistent. I've voted for this every time this motion has come before this chamber, and like many in this chamber, I continue to support the aims of the women affected, who quite rightly have run a very, very strong campaign to get justice from this. I do hope that in the term of this new Labour government, that they are able to find a way forward to doing this. But as Councillor Gibbard has said, you know, what they've been left with is a complete mess by the outgoing government, who did not resolve this and actually made the ability to do this far, far harder. So, you know, it's only a few months into the current Labour government, and I know that many have stood there with the aim and still believe that they would like to resolve this, but they don't have the resources to be able to deploy it at present. But I do hope that will change over the term of the Labour government, and I will happily, if it is Council's will, write on this. One point of clarification, though, in terms of what Councillor Holly said, I don't disagree in terms of his views in terms of the Ombudsman's comments on this, but just a clarification. The Ombudsman did not find the decision unsound. What he found was that the communication to women was insufficient, and that goes back to some in the process. So again, the Ombudsman looked at 6 areas, I believe, in this, and it was that aspect that was the one that was of concern. So again, I think certainly the Labour, Lib Dem and independent members were all of the opinion. I'm not sure how our Conservative friends voted at the time. I can't remember if they supported or not, and whether they'll change their positions this evening now they're not in power in Westminster. We shall wait and see. But I know for the majority of the chamber, I'm sure we'll be consistent in our decisions.
Nobody else? Councillor Holly, do you wish to come back?
Thank you, President. No, I have nothing more to add. I think there's the comments that are being made, especially by Councillor Gifford. I think it's something that, you know, as others have said, it's fundamentally wrong that we live in this society now where equality still exists, doesn't exist, and I think that the way this was handled, the maladministration of communication that the leader passed comment on, that's the maladministration, the lack of communication, the lack of openness. And I think that that actually should be a warning to everyone in the government and everybody in local authorities and in the Welsh government, Scottish government, whatever. If we don't keep people on board, if we don't keep people informed, then they get really upset about it. But this is something that I completely agree with, and I thank everybody for their support in this notice of motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, so can I have a show of hands in support of the motion, please? Any against? Any abstentions? Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. We move on to the second notice of motion then, please. And that's...
Presiding Member, can I ask a question about the Labour Party's amendment? Normally, you can only alter a notice of motion in a slight way. You can reword it slightly. And I think the way in which our colleagues in the Labour Party have reworded this is akin to War and Peace. It is incredibly well written. I'm not sure who did it. I think I may have asked my author mate from my ward to help him out because it's so long. So I was wondering, it's kind of, you know, is it legal the way that this is done? Right, so we can do that again in the future then. Oh, excellent. Thank you. And you heard it now? Oh.
Sorry, just to help on that, Councillor Holly. No, it's a fair point you're raising, and the Council Constitution sets the rules out quite clearly, right? But I think the key line in the rules is no amendment may be moved which would have the same effect as voting against the motion. The amendment doesn't negate that fact. It has context which is quite permissible within the Constitution.
Are you okay with that, Chris? Okay. Okay, we move on to the notice of motion then, and Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Presiding member, can I say I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't think it was going to happen so soon. But the people of Swansea feel let down by the UK Labour government. Like, I'm sure many of the Labour councillors in this chamber feel the same, because in July, Swansea residents were promised change, and I bet nobody expected it to be a change for the worse. Let's face it, over the last few years, countries throughout the world, including the UK, had to face the pandemic, the energy shock because of Russia invading Ukraine, and Councillor Stewart will blame Liz Truss, come what may, he always does. And throughout all this, companies kept creating jobs. We were coming through this, and when Labour took office on the 5th of July, the economic reality was that the bond markets were calm, output was going gangbusters, said the Office of National Statistics, and inflation was on track and on target, and the UK was the top of the G7 growth table. Then come along Sir Keir and Rachel from Accounts. They talked down the economy, damaging business confidence. In a cruel move, they cut winter fuel payments for pensioners across the country and especially in Swansea, but yet found £120 million for more politicians in the Senedd, leaving many pensioners in Swansea with the choice of either putting food on the table or heating their homes. They're destroying family farms in Gower, and putting food security for people in Swansea at risk. And then we find the hiking of the NI contributions, the jobs tax. Millions of jobs are at risk, as we found across the UK, and in fact in danger in Swansea. We are now in the relegation zone for the G7. And a Labour minister this week refused to rule out that the UK is heading for recession. Not a good tale. Food retailers are saying, as a direct consequence of the budget, food prices will go up, which means many of the most vulnerable people in Swansea will pay the price in higher food charges. That is a fact. So what went wrong? One thing is sure, this mess was made by Labour in Downing Street. And oh, by the way, don't get ill, because thanks to Labour and the Baroness Morgan in Wales, 24,000 people, yes, 24,000 people in Wales have been waiting more than 2 years for treatment. By comparison, in England, where the population is 18 times the size, just 148 people are waiting for treatment. I therefore call on the Leader of the Council to write to the First Minister, asking her to stand up for the people, calling on her to support and challenge the UK government's decision, which will cause financial hardship for many vulnerable residents in Swansea, especially due to the winter fuel cut, farming tax and the jobs tax for our hard-hitting businesses. I thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Devastating, delusional and disastrous. That's how I would sum up the UK Labour government. And to be honest, Welsh Labour are not far behind. 6 months of a UK Labour government has been appalling for the people of Wales, with commitments scrapped at every opportunity. The Welsh Labour government could have demanded that the new family farm tax, the destruction of Welsh fuel payments and the rise in employers' NI contributions to be scrapped. But instead, their silence is deafening. Instead, we face 25 billion tax rise on jobs, killing the economy. Millions of pensioners missing out on winter fuels. 400,000 Welsh homes now feeling the chill of Welsh Labour. Breaking up family farms and potentially destroying the UK food security. And to add insult to injury, Welsh Labour want to introduce a tourism tax, hitting farmers again who depend on a second income to support their farming to survive. On behalf of every cold pensioner, hard-working business, feeling the pinch and the sold-out farmers, we call upon this council to stand with them and ask the First Minister to lobby the UK government and rethink their policies. Thank you.
Okay, now call on the amendment. Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to move an amendment to the motion, if I may. The amendment has been circulated to all members for them to review. Look, I sometimes think we're in the Tories are in a fantasy land here, as if they weren't in power for 14 years. They believe that the disastrous mismanagement of the UK can be turned around in 6 months. What planet are they on? I mean, 6 months is a long time in politics. I mean, but for the Tory party, it's an incredibly short time. We'd have been through, what, 7 prime ministers by now, 5 prime ministers at that stage. We had Boris Johnson, who took us into a crazy Brexit negotiation, left the UK economy unable to trade properly with the rest of the world. You talk about protecting jobs. That has been the biggest killer of jobs in the UK, and that is why we've had no growth under the previous Tory government for 10 years, flat growth. People's wages are now at the same level under your government than they were 10 years previous. There was no growth in wages either. What we've seen from the UK Labour government since they've come into power has been a redressing of public services. It was very clear that the Tories had the same aim as they always have, to defund the NHS so that they could dismantle it and sell it off to friends in the private sector and big pharma. That is the one aim. They do not want people to have free healthcare. They've tried to dismantle it. They've defunded the Welsh government and they've defunded the Scottish government. That is something they have done. They've used the mechanisms of the Treasury to disenfranchise Wales. They've picked the pockets of the Welsh people by not giving them a fair share of the resources, the pot that the Welsh people pay into. Let's look at HS2. The UK Tory government decided that HS2 was an England and Wales scheme on the basis that there wasn't a mile or even an inch of track in Wales. That disenfranchised. I'm really pleased that the First Minister has lobbied and discussed with the UK government how we can get proper rail investment back into Wales so that we can start to build things like the metro in southwest Wales. That is something that the Tory government willfully did. Let's look at shared prosperity. We were told by Boris Johnson that after the Brexit, we would see a land of milk and honey. That was going to be wonderful. We're going to get so much more in terms of money coming to the regions. The reality of the Shared Prosperity Fund is your ministers took need out of the equation, whereby money that would have come to areas of need went then to leafy Tory constituencies. And this is not something that's up for debate. Rishi Sunak stood in the garden and got filmed telling people how proud he was that he'd taken money away from areas of need and sent it out to Tory constituencies. That is the true heart of the Tory party, should they have a heart at all. In addition to all of those things, you look at the stats of what the Tory government left behind. The child poverty at record levels, poverty at record levels. That is how they've treated the citizens of our country. And then you come along with a motion claiming that it's all Labour's fault. Well, I can tell you the difference Labour has made immediately. The projections your government left behind were to defund Wales again this year, to not give us capital monies, to not give us revenue monies to the Welsh government. The UK government have immediately changed that. An extra £1.7 billion coming to Wales this year, and that will allow us, in our forthcoming budget, to provide record sums into every one of our services, should this council agree the budget that we intend to bring forward. We were looking, prior to that, of hundreds of job cuts under the funding that the Tories had put in their projections for Wales, and therefore for local government in Wales. You talk about the NHS waiting lists in Wales. Well, yes, NHS funding is devolved to Wales, but it's like me saying to you, okay, feed yourself for a month on 50 pence and then complaining you can't do it. Well, if I only give you 50 pence, I can't expect you to feed yourself for a month. But that is the reality of what the Tory government was doing to Wales and to Scotland. You were giving the country insufficient funds and then blaming them for not being able to run services as a result. Shameful, shameful behaviour. And quite frankly, I'm quite happy to write as the motion originally intended to the First Minister to ask her, I was a bit surprised at the wording that they put forward, to support and challenge. I'm sure she can do both. I'm sure she'll support the money coming to Wales, and I'm sure she'll challenge for more money, as she always does. But of course, this isn't new for First Ministers. First Ministers have had arguments and challenging Prime Ministers in London for many, many years. But what we know about the Tory government is they've left the country in a mess. They've crashed the economy. Homeowners are paying higher mortgages. And I know Councillor O'Brien seems to find that funny. I don't. I mean, I remember Councillor O'Brien's comments on Facebook about homeless people a few years ago. I wonder whether she's changed her view. That gave us a good look at even the way in which local Tory members seem to view homeless people. If you haven't seen them, Councillor Thomas, I'm sure they're still there. I'm sure you can view them. But they were appalling comments, which any elected member should be ashamed of. But getting back to the main point, the Tories crashed the economy. They've lowered living standards for people. They've lowered wages for people. They've made job uncertainty worse. And this Labour government is committed to addressing all of those things. But it cannot unwind 14 years of neglect in 6 months. But it'll give it a damn good go over the 5 years.
Can I have a seconder, please?
Happy to formally second the amendment. And just to add, after all those years of suffering that's been inflicted, this is why we're seeing the extensive numbers of people in emergency and temporary accommodation through the cost of living crisis, which was created by the Tory government.
Okay, we'll now debate the amendment. Can I call on Victoria Holland, please?
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say to the councillor, I think it's quite ironic that we've gone from WASPy women to referring to Rachel Reeves as Rachel from accounts, as you know, to belittle someone and her job role. I know as a member of the Conservative Party, but I didn't have you down as a Daily Mail reader.
Councillor Chris Evans.
I'm happy to support the amendment. In a week where the Chancellor has listened to the concerns of non-DOMs and allowed them to keep the tax cuts, the tax breaks, she's at the same time slashed £3 billion from social security budgets, hitting the poorest and most vulnerable people in the country and expecting them to pay for the continued tax breaks for non-DOMs. So I hope the First Minister does challenge the UK government. I would say one of the first things that she needs to do is challenge them to remember what Labour values used to be, which is they used to look after the most vulnerable in society and not put forward red tie conservatism and austerity that Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and Liz Kendall seem to be pushing at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, so we now... Yeah, you're right to reply. Is you right first? Sorry, Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to pick up the points, I think thank you to Councillor Holland for making that point. I was going to address it. I think that just reeks of misogyny, to be honest with you. Were it a male Chancellor making those decisions, they would not be referred to in the same way. And I think that has to stop immediately. Women deserve equal respect in politics, and misogyny like that has to stop. Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job in difficult circumstances, and to demean her position by making her out to be some lowly assistant from accounts is just simply unacceptable. Right? That has to stop. Let's stick to the policies, not the personalities. Okay. In terms of the other comments that Councillor Chris Evans made, I think the Labour government should be applauded for taking real difficult steps to deal with the non-dom issue. The rules that will be in place, even with the amendments Rachel Reeves has made, will make it significantly more strict for people who claim non-dom status and will benefit the taxpayer accordingly. However, you can only do the sorts of things that this Labour government wants to do if you have the resources to do it. And again, that means making sure you have the right balance in the economy, making sure that you raise tax revenues in the right way. The reason why the government in 1997 was so successful, because it built up the ability to deliver vast investment into public services and to raise the standard of living in the UK, and to make sure that people saw the services that they needed being delivered in their communities. You can only do that if you have the tax base and the resources to do it. Given that we're in a position where the economy has been crashed, where growth has been absolutely non-existent for 10 years, where people's living standards are lower than they should be, where we have not seen the job creation that Councillor Jones alluded to. I don't know where he got that from. Those are the basis of the things that you put right in order then to raise your revenues in order you can invest in the services that people need. So I do understand Councillor Evans's points, but you've got to get the economy right in order to grow. I'm on record as saying I would like to see us closer to Europe, if not back in Europe. I think we've made that decision. And I think that's one of the things, if we can get the arrangement right, the trading relationship, as the Labour government is trying to do, to try and make sure that we get the right trading arrangements with Europe as our biggest trading partner, that will help with growth, because that is Boris Johnson's ridiculous approach to Brexit meant that it was very difficult for businesses in this country to trade, not least our farmers. I forgot to mention the farmers. They talk about protecting farmers. Their government signed deals with other parts of the world that put our farmers at a disadvantage, allowing them to import goods into this country, directly undermining our own farming community. And then they have the cheek to turn around and have a go at the government. So I'll leave it there. I think I've made my point. But Chair, I hope everyone will support the amendment and send the right message that the Labour government is doing its best in a very short period of time. It's got another 4.5 years to do the rest.
Right. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Chair,
Yeah.
I believe we've got to vote on the amendment now, don't we?
That's not,
Oh, you got the right to reply. Okay.
he's got the right to reply first.
Right, thank you. I think
Probably should have been first.
the Leader of the Council has a short memory, because I always remember when Liam Byrne finished as the first Secretary to the Treasury of the last Labour government. And he said there's no money left because they had crashed the economy. And, so don't forget that. It was the Conservatives and in that point, the Lib Dem government who had to work to put that right. So that was the last time the Labour Party were kicked out of government. And don't forget it. Reading Labour's motion, I have to say, it reminds me of something of an episode of Doctor Who. We're in a parallel universe. It's not what people are saying on the street, I can tell you. And when you're talking to people on the doorstep, it's not what is coming across. In your letter to the First Minister, perhaps you would also like to ask her, after years of Labour mismanagement in Wales, why Wales, and that affects Swansea, has the worst performing economy in the UK, why unemployment is now up by 50% in the last 6 months. Wales has the lowest level of employment in the UK, and worse, Wales has the smallest pay packets. Thank you very much.
Okay, we've had a mover and a seconder for the amendments. We're going to go vote on the amendment first. So can I show of hands in support of the amendment, please? Those against? Any abstentions? Okay, so the amendment as
It's now the substantive.
it now becomes a substantive motion. So we need to vote on that again.
Yeah,
Yes.
we need to vote.
Okay, so
Are there any other amendments?
oh, sorry, any other amendments? Sorry. Are any more debate? No. Okay, so we move it as a substantive motion. So we need to vote again. Yes. So show of hands in favour of the substantive motion, please. Those against? Abstentions? Okay, so it's been carried, and thank you very much for your support. Okay, good night, everybody, and a safe journey home.